Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Attorneys Dell and Schaefer, joined by attorney Stephen Jessup, and we're going to talk about one of Stephen's success stories where he helped a legal secretary with Unum long-term and short-term disability benefits to get approved. And Stephen, in this video, I'd like to talk about the background of the case, what the actual basis of the denial was, what you were able to do to overcome the denial, and try to provide some tips for people who are watching these videos as to things that maybe could have been done to help them with their claims if they're denied or trying to stay on claims. So get right into the background of this particular case.
You know, the background, my client was a legal secretary for 20 some odd years for her firm. There was problems in the workplace. You know, a lot of times there's, you don't enjoy your work environment, you clash with people, things along those lines. She had a disagreement with her supervisor, with her boss, and she was put on a leave. And she decided at that point to file for short-term disability benefits under the company plan, which Unum administered, but the employer, the law firm, was responsible for paying the actual benefits. She contacted me after Unum had denied her short-term disability claim, and then the appeal, well, not the appeal, just the claim. She contacted me shortly after they denied her claim.
So, I mean, I understand she had a disagreement with someone at work, but was she already treating for a medical condition at that point, or did...
There was some treatment with carpal tunnel type situations that she was having. The impetus of this claim was mental health related. That's what it was approved on. From a standpoint of what I would like to see for treatment, very, very minimal, very, very minimal amount to establish that there was an ongoing problem prior to the disability, which made it difficult arguing later. But we were able to kind of address those things about, not being comfortable going to it, not expressing it, and, working with her doctor and therapist to really establish that the problems that she presented with to them were likely something that had been going on for a long time.
So when you got the claim, which is, it's extremely challenging because you felt in your opinion there isn't a lot of medical support here, but because it was what's called a mental nervous type case, you felt like that if she had a doctor to support her and say that your behavior in the workplace or the way in which you're reacting or the way in which you're feeling and having issues with interacting with other people is because you're depressed and that's why you're behaving in such a manner.
That was the argument to be made. Now, when she contacted me on the short-term disability denial, she first got treatment after stopping work. So that, that creates a big problem because we don't have a history, and that's why we made the argument we did. But the records also said that there was conflict in the workplace, not getting along with the employer, with the supervisor, things like that. So Unum, under the short-term disability plan, there's a provision that if it's a work-related disability, it's not covered by short-term disability. So they denied her, saying this is a workplace problem. At that point, I said, listen, we have time, to go through the appeal process here. It was brand new. I said, I think based on what we have and what I saw medically speaking, I could see Unum's argument. I said, I think we should apply for the long-term disability side of things, and we can still work a short-term disability appeal, at the same time. So we made an application for long-term disability benefits, which was going to be underwritten by Unum. So now we know we're dealing directly with the insurance company. They make the decision and pay the benefit, unlike the short-term disability plan.
So what was your key strategy going into the long-term disability application because of the fact that you already felt that you were lacking medical support, and what did you need to prove?
I needed to prove that she was unable to perform the material and substantial duties of her own occupation. And what ended up being the denial of the application is that national economy standard. Unum reviewed it and said, listen, we don't find her entitled to long-term disability because she wasn't disabled throughout the elimination period, short-term disability, and that the fact that her condition is only related to her specific employer. And the way that they define your own occupation, it's how it's performed in the national economy, not how you do it in a certain location or for your employer. So they said she would still be able to work if she worked for another law firm, so therefore she's not technically prevented from doing her own occupation. That was the stance they took. So like we had discussed just a little while ago, it was making an argument with her doctors and treatment providers that her condition and everything that was presenting with, it had to have been a problem she was having much earlier on, and she just wasn't getting the treatment for it. That was the task we took. I was really honest with her initially too. I said, listen, just the way they're behaving and this going, I think there stands a chance that we'll see denials. We may end up in court in this. She was older, so there's only a handful of years in it. I just took a real liking to her, and I really wanted to help her out. And we worked the file up. Social Security made an approval, and I was surprised with Social Security because it ended up almost that their doctors were taking the same stance. The doctors that reviewed it, because they put her to her date of disability as of the date she stopped working. So these things all kind of helped, in presenting the appeal.
Now, you needed to prove that she was disabled at the time she stopped working.
Correct.
So this wasn't something that, oh, you stopped working and now I'm going to show after that date you became disabled. Because if you were only able to show after the day that she was disabled after the day she stopped working, would you have been able to satisfy the terms and conditions of the policy?
No, because she wouldn't have. She would have stopped working prior to the date of, especially like first treatment. A lot of times the insurance company will say, well, the date you first treated was 3 months after you stopped working, whatever the case may be. So you weren't disabled as of the time. So it was really trying to work an argument that, as she presented on this day, would it be reasonable to assume that as of her day of last work and even prior to it, she would have been exhibiting these same problems? If we look at the personnel file, you have a history where for decades of her working there, not these problems, and all of a sudden you start seeing problems eking up. So there was enough, I think, ancillary information to be able to make the argument and draw the nexus.
This case brings up a really interesting argument and question that the policy doesn't say that you have to see the particular doctor before your date of disability, because this is an example of that, where she may not have seen a psychologist or psychiatrist before her date of disability, but all of her actions from anyone who reviews the record say that you are behaving and acting in such a manner that obviously you were suffering with that condition. And so, but the disability carrier takes advantage and goes, well, you didn't see any psychiatric medical professional before then, so therefore you couldn't have had that condition. Yeah. Now, in a psychological claim, it may be a little more difficult, but clearly there's people who have chronic back problems or neurological disorders or whatever, and while they may see a doctor after the disability, doesn't mean that it just showed up the day after they stopped working.
Didn't magically appear. So I think they were trying to almost argue in the initial denials that, oh, convenient, you were put on a 2-week leave from your employment, so you just decided to file for disability because you don't like your job. I think that's what it was. And it's also that problem too of getting into specialists. It's not easy sometimes to get into a specialist. It can take a lot of time.
We also have we've done many cases like this where a person's kind of working while disabled, meaning that where we see it where people have been terminated or laid off, and basically they were trying to struggle through their medical condition, and basically what was happening is those people were there in body but not in mind. And those are not easy cases. Yeah. Not to say that's not the ideal way to go about it, and not that everyone who gets terminated who has some medical issues should be like, okay, I'm going to file for disability now. But you can still prove a case if there's something that can be attached and medical care shortly thereafter, the date of an event where you stop working, to say, look, clearly I had these issues beforehand. Because at the end of the day, these company doctors, whether it's Unum or whoever they hire, what are they looking at? Mm-hmm. They're looking at medical records and making a determination. So why couldn't they look at whatever other information is there and say, yeah, it's reasonable that you had these symptoms before and that it was limiting you? And I'm sure that's basically the basis of the argument that you made.
Yeah, and in that situation, the insurance company is never going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So, but we won the appeal. She was placed on long-term disability, and then we were even able to then, with that approval, and argue that, hey, these issues go back, they weren't work-related. Her employer, the firm who was responsible for paying the short-term benefit, did pay the remainder of the short-term disability, paid the short-term disability.
So basically you won a short-term disability appeal denial, appeal, and then you won a long-term disability denial. But I really think the Unum denial is so basic, unreasonable, in the sense of basically saying, when they say it's your work environment, basically they're saying you don't get along with 2 or 3 people, but if we put you in this other company, all of a sudden you're going to get along wonderfully.
Probably not.
Yeah, and so it's like so ridiculous. Like, take you away from those people who you couldn't communicate well with, couldn't handle the stress of the job, couldn't do your duties, and then you start having outbreaks, which I think you said she did. So you think the next employer who says, hey, can you do this, can you do that, and everyone's walking on eggshells like all of a sudden she's going to be this wonderfully happy person. It's not change the environment and you'll be fine. It's no, treat the medical condition. Yeah, then maybe she could go into another environment.
There's no nuance in their evaluation.
And so do you continue to represent her with her claim?
We do continue to represent her. At the time of disability, there's not a whole lot of time left on it. Reasonably, I would expect I believe it's still like maybe under a year of benefits to be paid. I would think at this point, Unum will probably just let it ride. They know when their financial liability ends, but they were hoping she'd go away, but she's like, I'm a tough lady from Philly. I just don't go away. So.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of good things out there. Congratulations to this legal secretary who won her appeal, and a lot of stories there to show that, look, you may not have the most medical support, but if you can get it thereafter and get the care and treatment you need, then you may have enough evidence to prove your claim and not have to force yourself to take another job and suffer and beat yourself up when maybe you can get compensation for your long-term disability. So if you have a Unum long-term or short-term disability claim, feel free to contact Stephen, myself, any of our disability lawyers. No matter where you live in the country, we're happy to help you. We always provide initial free consultation, which is as simple as giving us a call, and we look forward to helping you should you need us. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.